6 things you can do to immediately up your leather game, and they're all free. That's coming up. Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Reese. This is Weaver Leather Supply. Today, we're going to be talking about 6 different ways that you can up your leather game, your leather projects, your leather skills, and they're all free. Now, we're going to be talking about these different strategies in the context of a competition, like if you want to compete at a leather show. But these strategies are going to work whether you want to compete or you're just doing projects for fun. Now, why would you actually want to take my advice on how to approach a competition or something like that? Well, I've been a professional artist for about 28 years now, a little over actually. And it's kind of funny, a few videos back, somebody commented in the comment section, so you've been a professional artist for 28 years, that would mean you started as a professional artist in your teens. Well, I was born in the mid 70s and 50s, just a couple of birthdays away. So while I appreciate the compliment, yes, I've been a professional artist for getting close to 30 years now. On top of that, a few years ago, 2022, I entered my first leather competition. I entered this piece right here. It's called Dreams of Dragonfire. I've showed it to you before. It's the shield it's leather, 3D embossed and airbrushed. That ended up taking blue ribbon and best in category in my first competition. They had me in the Masters division, so that automatically locked me into competing in the Masters division going forward. I can never go backward. After that, in 2023, I entered a piece called the Homestead. We haven't actually shown it before. It's this piece right here, and we'll give you kind of a sneak peek. We'll put it up on screen so you can see it. But the Homestead, that was a piece that I really didn't know whether or not I could pull off, and it took blue ribbon, best in category, and best in show. And those wins, those blue ribbons, certified me as a master leather craftsman. On top of that, I've judged at multiple competitions, and I've judged alongside people that if I said their name, you would absolutely know them. They are legends in the leathercraft hobby. And I've had the privilege of not only judging different competition pieces, but seeing how they approach judging different pieces that have been entered into the competition. So I've got a little bit of maybe a unique perspective, and I wanted to share that with you today. So you may be looking at this and thinking, well, that all sounds good, and I might be curious to try it, but my skills are not there. I'm not ready to do this yet. Well, most of the competitions have a tiered system. IFOLG is a great example. IFOLG, I-F-O-L-G, stands for International Federation of Leather Guilds, and their tiered system is open. That's for beginners and anybody who's never competed before. So open, advanced, master, and grandmaster. And you have to win so many ribbons to advance to the next category, unless they look at your work and go, no, this work is too good. It doesn't need to be an open, it needs to be an advanced. That's a really good thing because it prevents the more experienced leather craftsmen from, just destroying the people that are in the open category who are trying to get their feet wet and they want a chance to win. It prevents you from competing against people who are just way more experienced than you are. So today we're going to talk about 6 different strategies that will put you in the best position possible to bring home that blue ribbon. Or like I said, if you don't want to compete, this is just going to help you up your game and put out some of the most creative work you're capable of putting out. Now, at the same time, I know you don't want to just sit here and listen to me talk. So I'm going to be working on a competition piece of mine that I'm going to use for an upcoming competition. Thought you might like to see that as it develops. So I'm just going to kind of pop in and out during the project and give you the next strategy. So with that, let's go ahead and start the project. The first strategy that I'm going to give you is to set yourself up for success with the judges. Now, what do I mean by that? We want to create projects that the judges will appreciate and understand. And I can give you an example of what I'm talking about. I love creating, let's call them prop style projects, something that might be potentially used in a movie. A book would be a good example. I might create like a spell tome or an old journal or something like that. And then I want to weather and age it and make it look like it's 150 years, or maybe make it look like it's been sitting in a barn and it's old and moldy. Well, if I put that particular project in a competition with a lot of other pristine and polished projects, well, the judges may or may not really get what I was going for. You never know what you're going to get. So you really want to set yourself up for success with the judges. Number one, you have to do projects that you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, it's going to show in your work. But number two, you want to do projects that the judges will appreciate. So strategy number two is what I call one step further. And that's where you ask yourself, okay, I've got a project that I'm happy with. What can I do to it to push it one step further? And the key here is that we want to push it one step further as long as it doesn't violate strategy number one. Make sure the judges can appreciate it, right? So how do I push this one step further? Your creativity, your originality really will go into this particular strategy. This is where you can push it in directions that other people may or may not have thought of pushing it. Once you've asked yourself that and you've thought, okay, well, I can do this to push it one step further, ask yourself that question again. Continue asking yourself that question. What's one more thing that I could do this to push it one step further? Keep asking yourself that until you get to the point where you say, there's nothing else I can do, or if I do anything else, it's going to hurt the project. Once you get to that point, you want to stop. But as you develop the project, ask yourself, what's one more thing that I can do to push this project one step further? So I want to give you an example real quick. I want to make sure I explain that really well. Let's say that we've got two bags. The bags are identical. The craftsmanship is identical, the pattern is identical, the color is identical. Everything about these two bags is identical with one exception. One of them is just a standard bag that's done exceptionally well. The other one is a steampunk version of the same bag. Now, if you've really gone into, putting your best foot forward and pushing that steampunk aesthetic as far as you can, and it's done well, which one of those two projects is going to come out on top? Well, it's going to be the themed version with the steampunk, because we've taken the project and we've gone one step further. That's what I mean by ask yourself, how can we take this one step further? Strategy number three is going to be ask yourself, how can I do this project in a way that the judges haven't seen before? And again, this comes into originality and creativity, which I promise you have. Okay, so let's stick with the steampunk bag. We've got a bag that has a steampunk theme to it. How can we do steampunk in a way that they may not have seen before? Well, instead of just attaching physical gears to the outside of it and kind of giving it a steampunk kind of look, what if we take those same gears and we use them to put impressions into the veg tan leather, so you've got an impression of a gear and we have a physical gear that's next to it. Gives it a little bit more of a three-dimensional aspect to the project. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, where not only are we're pushing the project one step further, but now we're trying to put a twist on it and see how we can do it in a way that they may not have seen before. The homestead was a fantastic example of this. When I entered into the competition and people got to come around and take a look at it, everybody, including the judges, had a lot of questions about how stuff was done. But one of the things they asked about the most was the grass. They wanted to know how I did the grass on the homestead. Now, the reason they asked about that is because it surprised them and they'd never seen it before. And it was one of the standout features of that particular project. And by the way, if you want to know how I did the grass on the homestead, come take one of my classes. So strategy number 4 is going to be to push your limits. And by that, I mean, for a competition especially, you need to be working right at the edge of your skill set. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying compromise the quality of work so that you can do harder projects. What I am saying is go to the edge of your skill set, push it as far as you can while still making sure you're doing top tier work, the best work you're capable of. When I did the homestead, that was a fantastic example of this. I had no idea whether or not I could pull off that project. There is so much in that project that was just made up on the fly. There's no tutorials out there for how to do most of what's in that project. So I was absolutely working beyond my skill set. But with about 6 months of work and 600 hours, it paid off, and it turned out to be one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on. So if you will push yourself and work at the edge of your skill set while still doing quality work, you will be amazed at what you're able to pull off. Strategy number 5 is going to be to combine techniques whenever possible. So let's say you're making a bag and you're going to tool it, and you have the ability to do pyrography as well. Well, if you can do all 3 of those at a high level so that your work looks really good, do it. That's going to give you the best opportunity to show off your creativity and your artistry. So let's use that steampunk bag that we've been talking about in this hypothetical project as an example for this. So we want to combine as many techniques as we can, as makes sense for the project, into this steampunk bag project, right? So we've already talked about we've got physical gears, and we can not only attach those to the actual bag, but on top of that, we can also use them to basically like stamps and impress them into the leather to leave that impression there. Well, what if before we attach the physical gear to the bag, we go in with our pyrography kit, and where we've left those gear impression in the leather, what if we go in and we take that pyrography kit and add texture to the impressions of the gear? Now we've got something that looks a little bit more three-dimensional with that stamp, essentially. We can go in behind that with Phoebing's antique paste and paint in the antique paste into those areas that we use the pyrography kit on, and now that's going to hold the antique for us. So not only do we have an impression of a gear, we've added pyrography to that for texture, then we've added antique to that for color and dimension, and then on top of that, we're going to add the physical gear near it so that we get more of a three-dimensional aspect. That's what I'm talking about when I say combine different techniques whenever you can. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, I don't know what techniques I have that I could combine. I don't know how to do pyrography. Well, number one, you can definitely learn pyrography. It's not as difficult as you might imagine. But number two, what other hobbies or skills or techniques outside of leathercraft have you learned that you might be able to adapt to your project? That might be the one feature of the project that just blows the judge's mind. Strategy number 6 is going to be to do big in a small way. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the homestead's a great example of this. If you look at the little lamp on the table in the back corner, not only can you see the little bowl where the candle is supposed to be at, but if you look very closely, you can also see the flame that's represented in that particular little candle. If you look at the bow, there's a bow and arrow up by the stairs, and the bow is actually strung. So doing big, like that's a big project, but it's done in a very detail-oriented way. Little Easter eggs hidden there that as the judges look at it, they find things as they go through it. So you might be saying, well, Daniel, I'm not going to be doing a project like that. How can I add in details to my project? Well, let's say you're doing a floral carving. That's very common, right? How do you add in details, and let's call them Easter eggs? How do you put Easter eggs into a project like that? Well, let's say that you decided to use a bar grounder in the background of the floral design. Well, you got to do quality work. That bar grounding's got to look good, but is it possible to have a flow to the actual dots? Maybe there's a spiral in the dots as they go around, and it helps pull your eye through the project. That's going to be super, super subtle, and they're not going to notice it right away. But when and if they do see that, that's going to be something that really impresses them. Maybe on the petals of the flowers, you add a subtle texture to it that you don't see right away, but the closer the judges look, the more of it they see. And I promise you, the judges are picking up your projects and they're going over it with a fine-tooth comb. So you want to put things in there that they don't see right away. The closer they look, the more they find. Even if you're not competing in competitions, these strategies are going to help elevate your projects and really showcase your creativity and your artistry. And I promise you, you may be saying to yourself, well, Daniel, I'm not an artist. If you're a leathercraft maker, if you make things with leathercraft, you're an artist. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I will see you in the next one. In the meantime, go make something amazing.